to strengthen the social and economic well-being of Lincoln and its residents by maintaining and improving public safety. We believe a strong business community creates jobs, opportunities, and a strong tax base that translates into a reduction in crime and revenues to support public safety professionals. This evening, we'll be discussing the current state of Lincoln public safety, and we are honored to have former Nebraska State Patrol Superintendent Tom Nesbitt and Lancaster County Sheriff Terry Wagner. Tom, Terry, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great to be here.
Give us an update where public safety is at in Lincoln today. Tom, I'll start with you.
Well, it's in dire straits, and in my opinion, and from my experience, what we're seeing, the biggest issue is we just don't have enough police officers, and in order to take care of our community and protect the public and safeguard people from crimes and disaster and whatever potential dangers are, you got to have officers. And we just simply do not have enough officers for the size of this city. And we've got to figure out how that our community leaders in the mayor's office, as well as the city council, can change the policy and prioritize public safety policy and fund it so that we can get enough officers to protect this city. As we all know, the city is going at some point going to really start to have a difficult time in weathering these storms and getting businesses into this community and getting people here because of the crime rate and what's going on. When Grand Island, Nebraska, per 1,000 people have more police officers than the city of Lincoln, that tells you just volumes of what's going on. And somehow we've got to get this priority changed around in this city so that we're able to support public safety and what we have. Firefighters are as well in probably not as difficult position as the police are, but the firefighters have dealt with a lot. This COVID situation, people forget that the mental health issues that these firefighters and EMTs are going through on a daily basis, and the number of calls that have increased and dealing with the manpower. And people say, well, they're getting paid overtime. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Overtime isn't worth all that they say it is. It's hours that's worked and how it takes its toll on not only the public safety officers, but also the families that are involved with it and doing that. And it's just simply put, we've got to change the policy here in the city of Lincoln. We have to prioritize our public safety to ensure that our citizens and the public are protected and well taken care of.
Tom, for the citizens that don't know, Tom was with the State Patrol 27 years, worked as a sergeant trooper from 78 to 99, and then superintendent from 99 to 2005. And then was also public safety director for the city of Canton, Ohio, coordinated 200 police officers and 200 firefighters. And I know the Lincoln Safety Foundation wants to thank you for lending your expertise to this discussion on what we need to improve public safety in Lincoln. But let's transition. I want to, our next person that's joining us tonight is Sheriff Wagner. Sheriff, thanks for joining us.
You bet. Great to be here.
Your service to our city and everything you do. For those who don't know Sheriff Wagner, he's the second longest serving sheriff in our 150-year history of Lancaster County. That's phenomenal. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
You've got 77 sworn deputies, 27 civilian personnel. Do a great job for Lancaster County, which includes Lincoln. So thanks for your service, and you're past president of the Nebraska Sheriff's Association. So your expertise in public safety is appreciated, and we'd love to hear from you on your thoughts.
Well, if it weren't for the excellent working relationship that we all share, and I mean State Patrol, Lincoln Police, the Sheriff's Office, University Police, if we were not able to draw on one another in times of need, we would really be in dire straits. A good example of, we can eke by on a daily basis with the number of police officers that we have in the city or the number of sheriff's deputies we have. But when you have a crisis like we had last May and June, with going to emergency staffing and 12 hours on, 12 hours off, and canceling days off for officers and deputies. It took its toll very quickly, and we ran out of cops, both city and county, very quickly. And it was just a good example that we just don't have enough police officers to, when the chips are down like that, we need more cops. And so that was just a real stark example to me of why we need more police officers on the street on a daily basis. And Tom is right. Overtime doesn't mean anything if you can't get a chance to take some time off and recharge. Even though you're making time and a half, it doesn't matter because you're getting burnt out pretty bad.
Part of our job at the Lincoln Safety Foundation is to educate the citizens. This statistic, let this sink in. Lincoln, Nebraska has 1.15 officers per 1,000. How does that compare with our surrounding communities? Grand Island has 1.6. Omaha has 1.9 officers. Let that sink in, City of Lincoln. And Omaha's trying to get to 2 officers per 1,000. We're at 1.15. We are dramatically short in staff compared to surrounding communities. And unfortunately, we've got, Tom or Terry, if you want to touch on this, we're looking at 10 more officers here exiting here before the end of summer. So we've got our work cut out.
Well, I think the national average is 1.7. That's what we should be at, is 1.7 officers per 1,000. And with that stat, we need a couple hundred more police officers in Lincoln. You're seeing with the events of last summer, you're seeing people who say, you know what, maybe this is not what I signed up for. And we've seen some folks leave. And I know LPD has seen some folks leave. And I think it's directly related to the state of affairs from last summer. And our challenge is to, how do we keep those folks and how do we not stop that drain?
Great point. And what you're talking about last summer were the riots that occurred down next to the county building on Lincoln Mall. A lot of property damage, a lot of some weapons discharged, very, very scary incident. But I don't think it's just what happened last summer. I mean, we can see what's going on in our city if we just look at the stats provided by LPD. So let's dig into some of these stats that are being reported by our own police department. Citizens need to be aware of what is going on. These are phenomenal. They're eye-opening. Assault on police officers up 88%. And these stats are 2020 compared to the average of 2015 to 2019. Violent crime up 18.5%. Assaults up 30.6%. Assaults with knives up 31%. Sexual assaults up 10%. Domestic assaults up a little over 3%. Protection order violations up over 29%. Disturbances up 13%. Trespassing up 58%. Overall emergency calls up 11%. Mental health, and I want to come back to public safety director because we have this interim health director. I'll come back to that. But we've had mental health issues that really popped up, over 17%. Drug overdose up 71%. Larceny from auto up 35%. Auto thefts 44%. Unbelievable. Arsons 22%. Fraud 13.5%. Now to be fair, traffic crime is down, but of course no one was driving really in 2020 with COVID going on. Child abuse, surprisingly, was a little bit down. Robbery a little bit down, but overall, you look at a lot of the stats, it is off the charts, rising significantly. And at Lincoln Safety Foundation, we have to make citizens aware of what is going on. I don't think the majority of citizens really understand the severity of stats But you didn't come to hear me talk about stats. You came to hear from the professionals. What do you think of these stats? What do we do?
Well, it's as I started off, and it's all about numbers. And as we all know, and I can remember, I've lived in Lincoln since 1982, and I got transferred here from Kearney with the patrol, and I can remember seeing police officers all the time in units and around the community. And I'll tell you what, you don't see them anymore. All they do is jump from call to call to call. That's all we can do. We can't do proactive patrolling and in the neighborhoods and be seen, because that's what lowers crime rates. When cops are out and about and being seen, then that lowers the crime rate. And we're not seeing that. And we have, like, I think last time I talked to some of the police officers, I think we got like less than 170 street cops, okay, working the streets. Now think about that. Think how big this city is. And we got 169 cops, and you got 24-hour coverage. You got days off. You got sick leave. You got holidays off. And I'll tell you what, it's just less than minimum coverage. It's very scary to think that these officers are out there trying to obviously curb our crime rates and do their jobs. And as Todd said, the rate of assaulting officers, that's gone out of sight to where it was. And a lot of that is a lack of officers and being able to have backups there when necessary and stuff. I can tell you right now from my experience, I was in law enforcement for over 30 years. And I know that if the last thing you want to do is have to call backup, but if you need it, you got to have it. And I'll tell you what, if you don't have cops out there for it, then the guys and gals on our streets that's pounding this pavement, that's protecting the citizens of Lincoln, are on their own. And that's a sad state of affairs. And again, our city leaders have allowed this to happen. They've allowed this policy of not having enough officers, not moving the money where it needs to be, as well as the firefighters, funding public safety overall. And then you factor in, and I know we'll probably get into at some point, that we got interim chiefs leading the pack here is not a good thing. It's a mixture that can come back and haunt our city and haunt our citizens. And it's just going to continue to deteriorate until someone grabs the straps here and turns it around and is committed to what we need to do for the public of Lincoln, Nebraska.
Good point. And I'm going to have you table the discussion on filling leadership positions. We will talk about that later, but I want to give Sheriff Wagner a chance to talk through the statistics and his thoughts on, improving these stats and overall improving public safety.
You've got to look at last year, it kind of in a silo because of COVID. Some of those stats were because people weren't going anywhere and were cooped up. I think, I was shocked that domestic assaults only rose by 3%, but, people really did feel they felt the closed inness, the inability to get out and to socialize and to do some recreation. And so, part of that's explainable, I suppose, not excusable, but explainable. And, I think a lot of that is sort of the attitude of our country now, in that, if you don't think like I think, if you don't do what I think you should do, then you're wrong and I'm right. And some negative consequences can come of that. So, yeah, I think there's a number of things that sort of work together to make those stats, and certainly one of them is the lack of police officers on the street. We're not able to do the proactive patrols like we'd like to.
Okay, let's circle back to what Tom, and I'm going to remind the audience, Sam's working our production studio here, and go ahead and type, if you have questions, type them in the chat room. They're not visible to me right now. Hopefully we'll get to some questions at the end. So feel free to put those in. But let's move back to what Tom talked about in filling leadership positions. Obviously, it starts at leadership, all departments and how they're led, and we seem to be persistent, and we're focusing on the police chief tonight. Obviously, it's an unfilled position. It's getting a lot of discussion, but we have a pattern. The fire chief, most citizens don't know, has been open for 18 months. And then we've had the interim health director, obviously wasn't confirmed and really established for, well over a year. And now we've looked at least since the beginning or end of December, January on the police chief, at least that's when it was reported. So filling these roles, how important is that? How timely should that happen?
Well, I think you saw a real good example of the consequences of not having an appointed permanent chief in the health director's position. As the interim health director, she didn't necessarily have the legal authority to enact those directed health measures at the beginning of the COVID. And that's when, everybody said, oh no, and the confirmation process moved along very quickly. But there's no reason why it needed to take over a year to confirm the health director. You're right. It's been 18 months since the fire department chief retired, came back as an interim. Now they have another interim. I'm not sure what the holdup there is, but there could be some consequences that hinders their ability to make some of those decisions. And so I think it's incumbent upon the mayor to make those permanent positions as soon as possible.
Tom, your thoughts?
Well, I'll start with the fire chief's position. It's well over a year it's been vacant of having a permanent fire chief. And the firefighters, EMTs, which I know many of them, and I'll tell you what, you're not going to find more dedicated people than the firefighters, the EMTs in this city. They are dedicated to the core to do the right thing. And without having a permanent leader, there's a lot that goes in on that people don't realize. And one simple thing is a budget. That person's responsible for a budget. And to lead the department in certain ways, you have to have the financial resources as well as people resources to do that. And if you got interim chiefs, they're just maintaining the budget basically, because you don't know where the next leader wants to go or what he or she is going to want to do for the department. And it hurts. I mean, these firefighters, I think that they're taking, like 10, 15, maybe 20 times more calls than what they did decades as the ATs are in the ambulance service, for instance. And I think they've increased it like 8 to 10 positions in that amount of time. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out all the overtime involved with that and wearing these guys out and gals and on these calls. Then you add in the COVID and they're dealing with these people in transporting them. And then you wonder, oh my gosh, have I been affected with COVID? And then you go home and your wife is worried about it or your significant other, whatever the case may be. Then you have children. There's a lot of mental health issues here. And if you don't have leadership in those places, it's very difficult to deal with that. Now, as far as the police chief's position, I'm telling you what, we need to find somebody that's got a track record and is very qualified to be the chief of police. And I don't care who that person is. I don't care if it's male, female, what nationality or whatever. It's about finding the right person for this and doing this. That's going to get out there and is going to fight for the citizens of Lincoln, Nebraska, and it's going to be very visual. It's going to be around and people have access to he or she and talk to them about what needs to be done in the community, and as a pure leader, a leader that's going to go in and say, look, mayor, look, city council people, we have got to change the policy in this city. We need more police officers. We only have 160 some officers on the streets. That's not near enough. As Sheriff Wagner said, the national average is 1.7. And in order for Lincoln to get there, I think they'd have to add like 150 officers just to get to the average it is at. That's how serious this situation is. And in order to do that, you got to have a strong personality. a strong leader that cares about the city, that wants to make the police department much better than what it is, and add officers. And nothing against Chief Blymaster. Chief Blymaster and I were friends, and he did a great job and did everything he could to protect this city. And I was sorry to see him leave, for sure. But I'm telling you, we've got to really gear things up here and change the policy in the city of Lincoln. And that position, the chief, has got to be the leader in that, to do that for the citizens of the city of Lincoln.
Well said. There's a lot there. Before we move on in back to this police chief hiring, I mean, let's reemphasize the point you made on the firefighters, and as well as coming up in the statistics on mental health. Again, it's been such an emphasis on the virus, on the physical containment. We've completely ignored what's going on mental health wise to all the. I think it's an issue that needs to be discussed. But moving on to hiring this chief. Now, it's a very different process. Most people have usually just, mayor takes care of it, maybe hires a firm, let's get it done. But there's been a committee put together to hire the chief, and wanted to get your opinions on this, because I've read the names. I think you guys are more qualified to understand who's doing that. But from the looks of what I've looked at, we don't have any active officers in understanding the culture. And Terry, I'm going to put that question to you. I mean, who should be on that committee to select the chief that maybe not there?
Well, there are two law enforcement officers on that committee. One former Lincoln Police captain who's now the assistant chief at UNL, and a retired Lincoln Police captain who works for the public schools. But the rest of those folks don't have any law enforcement background. And to be honest and fair, I was in a meeting on Monday with the mayor and her staff, and with other public safety directors, the jail, the FBI, and they asked us questions about what we thought needed to be in the next chief, or what we thought would be the qualities that they should look for in a chief of police. And I thought it was a pretty productive discussion, and I was glad that they did that. Now, having said that, I think the main qualities that the next chief has to have is walking that fine line between having the officers know that they're supported by the management and being responsive to the community. And sometimes that's a little bit in conflict, but that's one thing that the police officers, I think, have felt a lack of backing from the administration. And I think I think it's going to be tough for the new chief to show that support for their officers while maintaining that public contact.
Tom, your thoughts?
Yep. So, as Sheriff Wagner said, the officers are looking for some leadership, and they're looking for leadership that is not only going to lead them, but is going to be part of the department and be able to work with the city. And I'm telling you that we've got to have somebody with a track record and very qualified to be the next chief. Honesty and integrity is obviously a very important thing that they have in that. They've got to be open-minded and accessible, as I said earlier. And by accessible, I mean, they've got to make themselves accessible to the public, and they've got to go around to the neighborhoods, and they've got to be in the public and see what the needs are here. And probably the most important thing is understand these crime stats and how that we can lower that for a city like this. And again, in order to do that, the policy has to be changed. You just can't hire somebody and they're going to come in and say, yeah, we need more cops. That doesn't cut it. We've got to get the leaders of this city on board. And the only way that we can do that is a group of citizens, as a group of business people that care about our city that are going to give them marching orders. The money's there. We can find the money. They find money to do lots of things in this city. Believe me, lots of things. And a lot of things I don't agree with, but that doesn't matter whether I agree with it or not. The point is there's money there to make a difference here. And we need to do something in doing that. They've got to have the ability to lead, whoever this chief is. And leadership qualities are so important that they not only are qualified, but they've got a track record in showing that, and where they're coming from, wherever they come from. And maybe it's within the department. I'm not saying you got to go outside the department. I'm not part of that, but the committee that's put together is concerning to me. As Sheriff Wagner said, I know two people on that committee. Obviously, the assistant chief from UNLPD and the retired captain. And other than that, there's no one there with law enforcement on there and understanding of it. And that concerns me. It really does. I mean, I understand getting input from the community. That's very important and vital in this process. But we also, when it comes to an end, we've got to make sure that we pick the right person to lead our city and be able to do that. The other thing I'll say is commitment to diversity. Diversity is very important, not only within the department, but within this city. And everyone that's in this city is important, and we need to support everybody. And it doesn't mean that, there was days where you could disagree with somebody and walk away and shake hands, but man, I'll tell you, it's getting tougher and tougher for that anymore. And we've got to figure out how we get around that and how we work through that process. I have a lot of friends that don't see things like I see them, believe me, but you know what? We got mutual respect for each other, and that's important. That's important in leadership, and this chief, whoever that would be, would have that. Another thing, in my opinion, is the management of the police department. It's very difficult when the structure is one chief and an assistant chief, and then you run down to captains and being able to manage the day-to-day activities of the agency. In my opinion, you got to have at least 2 divisional assistant chiefs right below the chief and divide administrative and uniform divisions, and being able to lead that and able to manage that on a day-to-day basis. It's too overwhelming for one person to be doing all that. And in my opinion, that by changing the structure would make a huge difference in that department as well.
Good points. Things that you said that stuck out to me was qualified, track record, honesty, integrity. I'm going to throw it back to you, Sheriff Wagner. I mean, if you're looking for a track record and qualifications, where do you start when you're hiring such an important role? If you're
Jeff Blimeister was my chief deputy sheriff, for 4 years before he became the chief of police. And, when I was looking for the chief deputy, I was looking for somebody that, integrity is first and foremost the most important quality, and empathy for our employees, and the ability to relate to what they're going through. And Jeff, I thought, did a really good job at that. And he, part of the problem is he was so invested. I think he burned himself out with all that was going on in the police department, and tough call. I think the next chief has to have those same kinds of qualities. Integrity is first and foremost, and be that a line, an entry level deputy sheriff or chief of police. If you don't have integrity, you're not going to have the confidence of either the employees or the public. And so that really is the key component: integrity, honesty, and really the ability to let good people do their jobs, and just make sure they have the resources to do them.
How much does lowering statistics in their previous job play a role in that? So I'm not in your line of work, but I hire salespeople. Obviously, we examine their sales record before they're hired. If they're done well, they're qualified to sell. Same thing in law enforcement. Are you looking for histories of reducing crime in areas?
Well, every location is different. what might lower the crime in Billings, Montana may not lower the crime here. And so you really need to look at that individual community. What are the issues? Why is the crime going up or whatever, as it were, and then figure out those strategies that will work in that community. And it won't work in every community. So you bottom line is previous efforts at lowering crime stats may not be the biggest factor to consider. Winning tons and tons of football games in one place doesn't mean you're going to win football games in Lincoln, Nebraska. And so you've got to look at that same kind of thing.
Tom, a response, and then we'll see what kind of questions are coming in for Sam.
Yeah, as far as the crime stats, I just go back to where I started. It's all about personnel, and you've got to have that in order to lower the crime stats. It's just think about this. It's just common sense. If you think about it, it's common sense that by having numbers of officers on the streets, then crime will be reduced. I guarantee you that. They're seen, they're active, they're out there being proactive, which, as I said earlier, there's none of that anymore. And it's not the officer's fault there isn't any. There's just not enough of them that can go out and just actually patrol neighborhoods. I don't know. Those that are on here, I wonder how many of you have seen a police officer in your neighborhood recently, just patrolling, not responding to a call or something, and doing that. That's a huge thing to lower stats. And again, as Sheriff Wagner said, things have changed in being able to deal with those things and how to lower the stats as well. Not only personnel, but that's where a leader comes in. That's where a qualified and a track record for a chief comes in that has that experience and being able to do that. They'll be able to help with that. They'll reorganize. And if we can give them the tools and resources necessary to do that, we'll be successful. We'll get the city back to where it used to be and where it needs to be. So it's safety, proactive, and that people feel safe in their community.
Great. You guys have added a lot to the conversation. Again, kind of summarizing, if you're late to the call, we've kind of addressed the officer situation. We have a big shortage. We're at 115 per thousand. Grand Island's at 1.6, almost at 1.9 comparison. We went through the stats. I think, Sam, you published a link out there on, you can look those stats up to yourself, but we're talking significant increases in many categories in crime statistics that need to be addressed. And then we got into kind of discussing what's going on with not just the police, but also the fire, as far as some of the issues that they're facing. And before we go to questions, our big thing at the Lincoln Safety Foundation is priority. Law and order, safety, this is very important to our community, and we're looking for it to be a higher priority than what it has been. And it's a big area of need, and we desire it to be focused on. So with that said, Sam, what kind of questions we got going on out there?
We have several, and I want to apologize. It appears that we were hacked in the chat room, and I'm doing my best to monitor all that. But we do have some really good questions. One was, is there a lack of interest in these leadership positions?
Well, I think there is. I've talked to a number of command level officers in the police department, and I just jokingly said, "Are you going to put in for chief?" And the answer is not no, but heck no. And so I think there is. You look at what's going on, what's happening to chiefs across the nation, and they're either getting fired or getting forced out, defunded, those kinds of things. And so it's really incumbent that the leadership of the city support the chief, whoever that might be, and by extension, the department itself.
Well, my opinion is that there's a lot of good people out there, both males and females, that could lead this department. And I know several across the country that could do that. And there's a new breed of commanders coming up here that that really have cities at heart and cities in mind, that they want to do the right things. And that I know that I keep hitting on this track record and qualified, but I can't tell you how important that is, to have somebody here that's doing that. I don't want somebody that's got a PhD in something here that's going to come in here and expect to turn things around. It is going to take somebody that has the ability to lead, that's been on the street, that has an understanding of what the citizens need in this city. And there are people out there and that would take this job. And but we have to search for those, and we've got to have the right people in place searching for them, and have the right qualifications in mind as well in fulfilling this position. But they're there. I'm telling you, they're there, and I just I'll tell you, I'm praying even that we find that person, whoever that is, for the city of Lincoln.
I think one thing is really important though. LPD is not broken. You know, I mean, it's really, there's some great people that work there that do a great job. It is not broken. And, you know, every place could have improvements, but it's not one of those issues where you need to have somebody come in and fix a whole bunch of stuff, because that's just not the case. This is kind of like a merry-go-round going round and round, and the new chief just needs to kind of watch that thing go around and then jump on when the time is right, and see what's going to happen.
Now,
Yeah,
the police aren't any different than what the firefighters are. They're committed. As Sheriff Wagner said, I tell you, these guys and gals are committed to this city, and they want to do everything they can to protect the city and make it better. That's not the issue here. There just isn't enough of them. That's what the issue is. And in order to change that, you got to have strong leadership. And so that's what we need. And to change the policy of what this city has had for too long of a time, in my opinion. And I'm not pointing my finger at Democrats or Republicans or whatever. That's not what this is all about. This is about doing the right thing. And the right thing is changing the policy for public safety for the city of Lincoln. That's what we need.
Yeah, most of us think our cops are doing a great job. We just know they need more help. They need more help to achieve some of the missions we're looking to achieve. I want to throw a tangent question on before we go back to public questions. Hiring this chief, recruiting, you're looking for track record. Is their ability to hire and attract the right talent, numbers of talent, is that an important qualification we need to be looking for, considering our numbers right now?
Well, I can tell you from my experience that leadership will bring people to the department. Believe me, strong leadership that shows public safety and what they're trying to do, people will come to that agency. They'll want to be part of it. And that's hugely important, to have the right person in place to do that. Now, recruiting, you know what? It's a lot more difficult than what it used to be. And a lot of that is because of society. You know, I can't tell you how many cops, you know, of the most recent thing here in Lincoln that happened, and the riots, and what started out as peaceful protests and turns into riots of the officers, and what they went through, and then on the street to boot that. They just say it's difficult. It's difficult to do my job, because whatever I do, I'm chastised and people look down on me and whatever. And that's not a good feeling. Again, it comes back to leadership. You got the right leadership, as Sheriff Wagner leads his department, and then that makes a huge difference. And you can get people that will come into departments. Believe me. My daughter's in the process of now, you know, and I didn't know she was going to be a cop. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought she was going to go in the medical field like her mother, you know, and I thought I had her convinced of that. That's the place to go. But, well, I'll tell you, she's going to be a police officer. And you know what? I'm very proud of that, because she's going to be a very good police officer, because she has what it takes to be a police officer. And those people are out there. It's when I applied back in the 70s, you know, we had thousands of people wanting to be troopers. Believe me, they did. And now it's down to hundreds, unfortunately, because that's just the way society has changed. And somehow we've got to turn that around, in my opinion.
Yeah. Sam, back to the chat room. Questions?
You bet. Why has Lincoln fallen so far behind on numbers of officers?
Well, yeah, my guess is that we sort of rested on our laurels a little bit. Crime has traditionally been pretty low in Lincoln, and we've been able to eke by with a minimum number of officers to keep the city safe. But as we're seeing, that's changing, and that's really, I think, how we got to the position we're in.
Well, last time I looked at, I think the authorized strength of police officers in the city of Lincoln was like 348 officers.
Yeah, 350.
And I think that currently we don't have that many. I don't know how many we have. I'm going to be honest with you totally, but it's less than that, I'm sure. It's always been in Lincoln at least 15 to 17 officers a year leave the department, and they leave the department whether it's retirement, a different job, medical reasons, whatever, but that's kind of an average. So now you think about this, that you got to have a camp every year of at least 15 to 16 officers just to maintain the levels that you're at. And then you factor in the funding into that and how much funding is being put into the department to hire the officers. That's hugely important too, and the resources. So it's a combination of a lot of things and being able to do that. Lincoln has always had, since I can remember, the mayoral office has been able to add 10 additional officers, whatever authorized strength was. They've always had that I can remember anyway. Well, we haven't been there for years, I'm sure of that. And the reason being is the funding. Again, it goes back to priorities. What are we going to prioritize our money for? There's taxes dollars here that's used for this. That's what citizens expect. You know what? If you call 911, you expect either a police officer or a firefighter to show up. And that's what this is about. That's a one thing that citizens absolutely should have the absolutely confidence in, that someone is going to come and help them. And we have officers, again, that are dedicated to this, but we don't have enough of them. And somehow we've got to turn this priority around, in my opinion.
I think, where do you feel like public safety falls as a priority amongst council, mayor, everyone involved in leadership right now? Do you feel it's properly ranked, or it's down the list of ways?
Well, my personal opinion is it's down the list. I mean, just look at it. I mean, we've got 160 some street officers. Think about this, and somehow this has fallen off. Somehow this priority has gone here, and it's clear down to here now. It's not the priority it used to be. We're more concerned about other things. I think that we just hired some climate expert for $100 and some $1,000, and I don't know all exactly what that's about, but that's $100 and some $1,000. But I can tell you that would have put an officer on the street and been able to do that. And we're not working that. We're somehow we forgot what this is about. And I don't understand this. I ran for city council here 4 years ago, and unfortunately I didn't get in there. Well, if you talk to my wife, it's fortunate I didn't, because she's glad I'm not putting up with everything it is. But seriously, I ran and I saw this crime coming. I saw what the stats were then, and I kept saying every time I talk to people, this is going to get worse and worse and worse. We've got to do something and add more officers. Nothing's been done. It's just very unfortunate what's happened to the city of Lincoln.
Citizens, violent crime 18%, assaults 30%, assaults with knife 31%, trespass 58%, drug overdose 71%. Auto thefts, 44%. I just want to reiterate those. We have to bring that up at council meetings, talking with leadership throughout the city. I don't care what position they are. Public safety, that's our mission here at Lincoln Safety Foundation. We need to make it a priority and a point of emphasis and not get pulled off track. Sam, other questions?
Yeah, a good follow-up kind of to the last one, and that is Lincoln, do you gentlemen believe that Lincoln is a soft target due to lack of officers, especially like scenarios in Boulder and Atlanta? Does that make Lincoln vulnerable? It's a great question.
You know, we talked about that just this morning in light of what occurred in Boulder, and you know, unfortunately, law enforcement's kind of reactionary in a lot of ways. But if there are, if there are police officers in the parking lot of a grocery store, a gunman will think twice about going in there, shoot it up. And obviously, you can't have a cop in every parking lot, but the more police officers that you have, the more visibility there is, and the less likely someone may be to take action like that. But some folks, depending upon their mental state, it's not going to matter to them how many cops there are. If they're intent to do harm, they're going to do harm, unfortunately.
My opinion is that we are a soft target. Don't kid yourself. Those that are in the criminal element that are seizing on citizens, and whether it's property or assaults, whatever the case may be, if they see that Lincoln does not have what it takes to be able to curtail and able to battle this on a day-to-day basis, they will come to the city. I guarantee you. You can look at history way back when the mafia was put in place, and the places they went to places where there wasn't law enforcement strong enough to deal with it. That's where they set their roots. And I'm telling you, it's just like Sheriff Wagner said, if you got enough officers around that people are seeing, they're going to think twice about it. Now, not everyone. There's still the knuckleheads that are going to do something regardless of how many cops there are. But believe me, that's a very, very small amount. But yes, it makes a difference in what's happened in Lincoln and what's going to happen in the future.
And so citizens don't know, Tom served on the governor's Homeland Security Policy Group involved in terrorism, bioterrorism preparedness. So this isn't just some shoot from the hip answer. And they're tough things to talk about, but we need to talk about them.
Absolutely. Yep, they need to be talked about. And I'm so grateful the Lincoln Safety Foundation is bringing this front and forward. And I'm glad the business people are behind it and the citizens. And I urge anyone that's listening to this, if you're not part of this safety foundation, jump on board and support it and be vocal. And that's the only thing that's going to make a difference here in getting our community leaders to listen to us.
Sam, I don't know do you have a slide you can pull up on information on the Lincoln Safety Foundation?
I'll sure try. I tried it earlier and it was not working for me, but I'll try it again here.
Well, it's not hard to find on Facebook. You type in Lincoln Safety Foundation, like that page and follow. You can search for Lincoln Safety Foundation. Google, you'll find it there. A lot of good information on public safety for the city of Lincoln. Wrong slide, but this is a good slide. Sam, stop here. This is the stat we were talking about, the 115 for Lincoln versus the 16 and 19 for Omaha, and that's officers per 1,000 people. So if we were to get to the Grand Island level, we would need 152 more officers. Now, we're not looking for that to be done overnight, but we need a concerted effort. We need prioritization improved, and we need some focus to get back on the right track. And that's really what we're advocating for is public safety. Do we have the other slide on the Lincoln Safety Foundation? If not, that's okay.
Yeah, the information, the website and so forth. I'll work on that right now.
Okay. While you're looking, another question that's popped up that you think is a good question to ask Sam.
What's the biggest drain on the police force, and what can we do as citizens to help? I think you've been covered a little bit, but I think it's a great question.
Let me just add before they respond. I was really proud of this city, just speaking on a personal level on the response when Officer Herrera went down. We're forever indebted to his sacrifice on that. But I also know the citizens came out in droves. They prepared meals, cupcakes, cookies. I mean, there's no doubt that the majority of citizens are behind our officers and in supporting what they do. And so I know the response from the citizens to try to lift morale was up, but that doesn't answer the whole question. So Terry, Tom, I'll let you take kind of the rest of the question.
Well, I think Boy, Todd, you hit the nail on the head. The vast majority of people in Lincoln really do appreciate law enforcement officers. Um, it's that small minority that's been very, very vocal that seem to be driving the bus right now. And the biggest drain, I think, for police officers is just, Tom mentioned it earlier, it's going from call to call to call to call. You don't get a chance, we are very fortunate in the county. If you're taking a report from somebody that their tractor battery was stolen, you're probably going to have a cup of coffee and maybe a cookie with them when you're taking that report. LPD officers don't have that luxury. They've got to go, 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 go. And, they barely have time to get that report taken. And there's another hot call waiting for them. And if you listen to the police radio on any given Friday or Saturday night, that's sort of the way it is. And they don't have a chance to work that call from beginning to end and try to really solve it. So I think, again, it goes back to that lack of numbers when they're just going like that all the time.
Yeah. Posted, just want to interrupt before you go, Tom, LincolnSafetyFoundation.org. Twitter, it's Lincoln Safety. Facebook, Lincoln Safety. So that's where you can find it.
Look in the chat room there, and it's up there. And go ahead, Tom.
I'm going to tell you something, folks. This is where we're at. We're at a fork in the road here, and I can't stress it enough. I have over 30 some years of law enforcement experience, and I was not only the colonel of the patrol, but I was a public safety director in Canton, Ohio, and I'm not shooting from the hip here. We have got to do something. We've got to figure out how that we can get the mayor and the city council to support public safety. Again, this isn't a political thing. This is policy, the policy of the city, and we're entitled to give our opinion and do what we can. If we don't change things here, it's just going to continue to deteriorate for the city of Lincoln. And that's a sad deal. I've got grandkids, and I'll tell you what, I don't want to see them growing up in this thing and what I see coming. And we've got to be able to do something. The officers are willing, more than willing, but there's not enough of them. The firefighters are more than willing, but there's not enough of them to do certain things here. We're not dealing with the firefighters' mental health, as Todd had said, and other things that we need to deal with. We need leadership. We've got 2 interim chiefs right now. They're great guys. Believe me, I know them both, and they're capable people. That's not what the problem here. It's the title called interim. That's the title, and that does not allow you to lead the way you need to lead the department. If you have something come up, guess what? You're going to call your boss. In this case, they're calling the mayor's office, whether it's the chief of staff or whatever. What do we do? How would you like to have us handle that? I know that because I've seen that, and that's how these things work. That's not leadership. That's not going to cure the problems that we have here in the city of Lincoln. We have to get proactive, and we have to do this for the citizens of this great city of ours. We're in dire straits, and as I said, we're in a fork of the road, and we've got to decide what we're going to do here, in my opinion.
To reemphasize your point, call your elected officials, all of them, city council, mayor's office, call the aides of the mayor, call whoever will listen that's in leadership down there. Come down to the council meeting, stand in the hall. You can't be silent. This has to be a top issue on any elected leaders. Again, we're not promoting any party, anything like that. We're just promoting public safety, and people need to hear that.
I think something that would really be beneficial to the next chief. The city attorney is under contract. And so if a new mayor comes in, they can't automatically terminate the city attorney. That contract has to run out, and then they can select a new city attorney, which is what happened, with Jeff Kirkpatrick. He was on contract for a while. The same thing needs to happen with the chief of police. They need to be under contract for a certain number of years so that they're, every day there's a potential for them to get fired if the mayor doesn't like what they're doing. And it really has the chief kind of walking on eggshells. So if there was a contract in place, the chief could lead the agency the way it should be led and not have to worry about that potential for getting fired every day.
We got about 5 minutes left. No more than 5 minutes. We want to keep this at an hour. We know everyone's time is valuable. Tom, I'll throw this back to you, Sheriff Wagner, first. Your closing points of emphasis. You really just want the citizens of Lincoln to hear from their sheriff, citizens of Lancaster, I should probably more accurately say. What do they need to hear?
Well, you know, a close friend of mine told me recently he understood why the chief law enforcement officer in the county was elected, so that he or she is not subject to those daily pressures. And I think, that's something that I agree with a lot. But we really need to strive to get a police chief, not because they're politically correct, but because they have the leadership abilities to continue leading that agency into the next 10 and 20 years. And we need to get beyond appearances and the touchy-feely and feel good, and really need to get somebody with good leadership capabilities and integrity to lead the agency.
Yeah. Just to clarify for citizens that don't know, Sheriff Wagner is elected. It's not a hired position, not under the authority of the mayor. He's a standalone officer for the county, elected that way. Tom, your closing thoughts, points of emphasis, you really want to hammer home to the citizens of Lincoln.
Well, we've got to get involved, and we need to do that. And I, like Sheriff Wagner, is we've got to have somebody in that position that's going to lead and be able to lead, and not worry about some puppet strings that are attached for some reason, and not allowing them to do what they want to do and what needs to be done. I haven't given a contract much thought, but that's a good thing to think about. And I'm going to be honest with you, Sheriff, I didn't know the city attorney was on contract. I was not aware of that, and that's interesting. But we've got to have strong leadership. We got to have a track record and qualified person. We don't need a person that's going to come in here and be touchy-feely, like Sheriff Wagner just said. We need somebody that's going to come in here and lead and do the right thing for the citizens of Lincoln, Nebraska, lower the crime rates, increase the number of officers, that's going to be in the public, that's going to be recognized and be able to communicate. And the thing of diversity is so important, to be able to communicate and do the right thing. Everyone has a voice, and I agree with that, but we have to do what's right for the city of Lincoln, and we've got to do something about these crime stats. And again, the only way we can do that is go forward, be at the council meeting, knock on the mayor's door, whatever it is, and say, we need more money for public safety, for the police and the fire to do the right thing. That's my opinion.
Thanks for your thoughts on that. Well, this has been a great discussion. We felt it was imperative. It's been a very one-sided discussion to have a well-rounded conversation with experts in law enforcement on what we feel is a huge hire. And we know a lot of big hires need to happen. And more importantly, at the end of the day, we need results. We need to get these stats under control, and we need to get numbers back up for the safety of our town. So thanks for joining us for this important hour, and I appreciate everyone's contribution and discussion tonight.